You're not the only one that can see it. We are being belt-fed Triumphs at a rapid rate of knots. I've ridden them all, and each time one comes along, I can't help wondering just how many more modern classic tricks Triumph has left tucked up its checkered sleeve. "2019 is all about the Speed Twin. Triumph are going for a triple-pronged attack with this bike. From design draft to showroom floor in just 3 years, it may have been around since 1938, but this modern Speed Twin was unveiled just a couple of weeks ago in Paris. Speed Twin has the looks, Speed Twin has the performance, but just how good is it? Once more into the fray. Speed Twin rolls on Pirelli Diablo Rosso 3 tyres, an all year round, all road conditioned tyre that's great for sunny Sunday blasts. You could probably nick the odd track day on it, decent mileage. It's a great tyre. Triumph has opted for a Brembo brake on Speed Twin, axial, not radial mount, 4-piston calipers on floating discs, one either side of the front wheel. Holding everything in place at the front is a 41mm Kayaba fork, unadjustable at the top, but with a cartridge kit in it. What you'll see as a rider when you jump on the bike is a slightly higher rised set of bars. The risers are longer than other bikes in the Triumph range, and a twin set of analog clocks with digital inserts in the center sections of each. Bars are slightly higher up than you might expect. Clock set sits nice and proud, very easy to see, but the biggest thing you might notice when you jump on it is the seat height. It's a little bit lower than you would expect at 807mm. On these pegs you'll find that they are slightly further forward than on something like Thruxton, 38mm further forward, and also a touch lower, 4mm lower than the peg set on a Thruxton. Sticking with that Thruxton theme, this bike is actually 10 kilos lighter at 198 kilograms dry. So how have they achieved that weight saving? Cast alley wheels, work on the motor, a lightweight battery, and general weight shaving, certain sections of the frame and everything just being trimmed up. The big noisy black bit that you can see here is the 8-valve 1200cc high power version of Triumph's Twin that comes from Thruxton. Now the work that they've done within it to reduce inertia has also helped to increase power slightly. So we're at 97 horsepower-ish, 97 PS, whatever that might come out as, and 112 newton meters of torque. So in shaving all of that weight that they have done everywhere that they can, reducing inertia everywhere, what Triumph found was that actually the bike was a little bit too twitchy on the frame that it came on when they were developing it. So they've had to increase the wheelbase slightly. It's 15mm longer wheel to wheel than a Thruxton. The way that they've achieved that is by just slightly stretching the chain adjusters. So the swing arm that you can see is from Thruxton, but the chain adjusters allow just a little bit more travel, just a little bit more wheelbase to slow everything down just a little bit. Twin KYB shocks out the back have the same 120mm of travel as the forks at the front, but you can play with these. Just the preload, you can wind things up a little bit should you need to make things a bit firmer for yourself, or should your pillion be the opposite of dainty. I try not to get too drawn into giving you my opinion of how bikes look. That bit's up to you, but I can't not mention just how cool the back end of this bike looks. They've done a brilliant job giving a factory finish to something that looks like it's been made in somebody's back garden. As is the norm with all of the modern classics from Triumph at the minute, the detail that they've gone to with the design is something that they should be commended for, I think. Everything from the little stitching in this accessory seat that you can have, the back end work that they've done with the mudguard, all the way up through to this hand finished tank, available for an extra 300 quid over the standard price. So moving up from this sweet tank, we've got the controls. Fairly simple, quite easy to use. 3 riding modes to choose from: rain, road and sport. You can also turn the traction control off. ABS is on all the time. Now we could feed you all of the fast onboards, beauty shots and wheelies and sweet cutaways of great countryside that we can, but eventually we're going to have to start telling you how this bike feels. This starts and finishes with a super light clutch. Triumph has worked on the design of the internals of the clutch. They've lightened everything up. The action is smooth. If you're just a round town rider, there's plenty of steering lock, a lightweight clutch, easy brakes, easy to use controls. You're ticking all of the boxes that you're looking for if you're just a town guy. Out of town, things come alive. That motor is a peach. Not only is it a peach, but one of the things that I really enjoyed was the feeling that there's like a quick action throttle going on here. It feels like there's about half a turn. Look, I'll do this over accentuated. That's it. That's all you get. There's no long travel. You don't have to keep winding the thing up to find the throttle stop. Just have a little twist and you go all the way from 0 to everything that it's got. One thing I also liked is the fact that the rev needle only revs to the rev limiter. I'll try and explain what I'm talking about. On the dial, I can see 8,000 revs. And you know when you're riding, unless that needle is ding, 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 pinging off the end, you've got usable power all the way up until the limiter cuts in, whether you're in first gear or sixth gear. It's just a tiny detail that I noticed that I quite liked. There are other bikes where the revs might go to 13,000, but actually the thing's pinging off the limiter at about 11.5. Why bother having the rest of that stuff on the clocks? I just don't get it. These look cool, and they also work in as much as you only need to take a tiny glance down at the clocks to see that you've got more revs to use, or maybe you're just bouncing off the limiter and you need to change gear. I found the transmission firm and precise, but it's not something that can be hurried. You can't just smash your way through the gears. The best, for the most rewarding experience when you're looking for drive across 2, 3 or 4 gears, is just to take your time with the shift. Click, full gas. If you try and rush these things and hurry them up, you're just going to upset the dynamic of the bike and probably slow your progress down. Old school ton-up boys will be pleased to hear that this bike will sit at 100 all day long. It whips up there as well. I started and ended the day in rain mode for a number of reasons. First thing in the morning here, before the sun got up and dried the roads out, it was fairly damp, but rain mode for me was also the smoothest of the 3 rain, road and sport modes that I could choose from. In road and sport, on the way into corners and kind of mid-corner, if I didn't know where I was going, unknown roads, I didn't know where I was going all day, I found that I was just trying to pick up the gas or just modulate what I was doing to help adjust my line. And I found that sometimes in sport and road mode, I was just having a little bit of a lurch, not necessarily unsettling the bike. It wasn't crazy going all over the place, but it wasn't quite as smooth as I would hoped. So what I ended up doing was reverting back to rain mode. Again, same power and torque as the other 2 modes, but just a softer delivery. Everything was happening that I wanted to happen, but there were still stacks of drive when I went looking for it. So once I got some heat into the Diablo Rosso 3s, I was able to go scratching around, push the limit a little bit and try and have some fast fun on this bike rather than just mince about in my weird Lego Man AGV helmet. For the most part, the braking system on this bike was more than capable of everything that I was doing on it all day. There were a couple of scenarios where I felt like I was being held back slightly by the ABS system that this bike has. The scenarios that I'm talking about in particular were usually downhill, very fast, into hairpin bends. So I'm chugging down the gears and squeezing more on the brakes than I would usually if I A, knew where I was going, and B, I was on a typical road in the UK. Squeezing the brakes on, good. Squeezing the brakes on all the way to the point of ABS activation gave me this slightly pushing on feeling. Maybe like the wheel speed sensors for the ABS system were taking a little bit too long between releasing and then reapplying the braking force that I was asking for at the lever. Didn't ever catch me out, didn't ever push me across the wrong side of the road or create any kind of scenario that I would class as dangerous. In chassis terms, I love the way this bike feels when you've got it set in a corner. You get in, you hold the gas, it's constant, you're waiting for the point where you can start winding things on and pushing out of a corner, even with the traction control off so that I could knob around and pull wheelies. There was never really a feeling that I was about to overcome the sticky tyres or chuck a huge spike of power into the thing and tie itself up in knots. Everything felt very smooth, very fluid, and loads of fun. I did get the chance to ride some closed roads, and I did go as fast as I could. You would too. I wound it up to about 121 miles an hour. There is a little bit left in it, but I think as it is, if we remember that this is a real world bike, it's not a track bike, 120 miles an hour, that will probably do most of us, right? Before I knew it, the sun started to settle over the back of Mallorca. That signalled the end of my day. Started making my way home, realised that I was on the roads that Lorenzo cut his teeth on, wanted to stay here a little bit more, wanted to ride this bike more, but I couldn't. End of the day, dark, bit wet, bit greasy, so I just knocked everything off and cruised back to the hotel. It gave me a chance to allow my thoughts to crystallise on the Speed Twin. Now, I had quite high expectations for the Speed Twin. Based on looks alone, you just would. Take a look at it. There are a couple of areas for me where I was maybe less impressed than I thought I was going to be, and I've had some time to think on it, and I think basically what I've been doing is looking at this through the wrong eyes. I've come to this bike thinking about a sports bike man who's maybe spent the last 20 years trying to ride as fast as he can on something fairly focused. This is his chance to relax and step down, and I think those guys might struggle a little bit to get their head around what's going on here. Let's remember that this bike is only £10,500. There are lots of bikes that are more expensive than this that I wouldn't choose over this bike. For me, the front end is just slightly compromised. I would have preferred a slightly firmer and slightly better performing front end. And the brakes for me feel just a tiny little bit out of date. I don't know whether it's just because I know their axial mount. The performance is very good, but I don't think it's class leading, unlike the looks. Let's remind ourselves that it's a very pretty thing, and the core audience for this bike bases most of their decision on looks alone. Look at the proportions of this bike. Look at the work that Triumph has done to give us their version of the best home-built custom bike that you can buy. Tiny little touches. When you go to the dealer and take a look, just run your finger around the back of the mudguard here that's been cut down and shortened. The proportions are perfect. The tail light is lovely. I love the look of the bike, and Triumph need to be commended for doing the amount of work that they've done with Speed Twin. Is this the bike for me? Unfortunately not this time. But it could be for you.